Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is the Jupiter hour, actually moon night, and the moon is about to conjoin Regulus on anaretic degree 29 degree Leo, Jupiter's second house 24 degrees Cancer, and I don't pull out my Let's Do It Jupiter talisman because A, Jupiter is squaring Chiron, but I already did a talisman of Jupiter squaring Chiron. However, um, it's squaring the sun as well, but the moon is really sensitive. It's applying to square Uranus and black moon Lilith. So this is this is a challenged moon in conjuncting Saturn, Neptune, in conjuncting Pluto. So I don't pull up my Let's Do It Jupiter Procyon talisman yet. Midheaven, cross Dana ascendant 14 degrees Gemini. I want to talk about something to do with boundaries, energy boundaries, setting boundaries, and what is the core issue for some people in setting boundaries. Now, this is a little shadow work between me and myself that I'm sharing with you right now because for a lot of the times in my life, I was introduced to the topic of boundaries. And funnily enough, I was born in Israel. So we understand how um, boundaries that people shouldn't have been having to set to begin with is connected mundanely with the area. And this is, okay? And you know, whichever way, like, it's a tautology. Whichever way you view it, it's true. And so, and so, every time that I was told, you need to set boundaries, you're going to have to set boundaries, that this with the boundaries, the issue with the boundaries. Even when I was in academia, we had a dean. That dean was basically exploring geopolitical situations and something to do with boundaries, and it was um, kind of like a lefty, academic freedom and looking into the Palestinian question and whatnot. But the thing is, he was a trafficker. He was a human trafficker. He was a human trafficker. Okay? And now and you want to hear a funny story? Because in the litigation against him, there was an issue where somebody said that he was saying, using a word, using gaslighting, using a word, and he claimed that he did not know, like, how would that be interpreted. And the thing is, like, he was a human trafficker, tried to traffic somebody, tried to basically force himself on someone, supposedly for the payment that they get as assistant. And but the thing is that I remember that I confronted him about something because there was an issue with the department is supposed to be kind of like the human resources and tending to sexual boundary violations in academic institutions, and they were being corrupt towards everyone. So I was just confronting him about that topic. Two things happened. One, um, that person basically tried to send a certain engulfing energy towards me that I had to set energy boundaries to. And it was trying to send like a hug, but a hug that stifles rather than a hug that hugs. And that was something I had to set boundaries to. And secondly, he was an Englishman and he said something, I don't remember what it was, but I was like, okay, that guy really has problems with the language. Now, why am I saying that? Because a lot of you had difficulties setting boundaries, so to speak, because the core issue of why you needed supposedly to set those boundaries is about rage. And what is rage? Anger is when external boundaries are violated and you have to assert yourself in the face of something external. Rage is when both internal and external boundaries are violated and a person doesn't even feel like they exist inside their body. And so the rage basically keeps the soul somewhat attached to the body in a non-dual way, okay? And at the same time threatens to dissociate. So for many of you, it's not that you have an issue with setting boundaries, it's that the core issue is that this is not even a situation where those were boundaries that you would have to set. And the understanding that basically you're facing a situation where it's a different thing. Let's say, I don't know, let's say somebody is forgetting, I don't know, I had a parent that used to wake up early in the morning and think they have the right to wake me up as well. So I had to set that boundary very fiercely. That I had a roommate that did that, and I had to set that boundary. I told him, listen, if you want us to separate to different houses, I'm going to look for an apartment. And then they're like, okay, they understood they can't just burst into my room anytime. And so that's a boundary, okay? It can anger us, it can frustrate us, but that's an issue of setting a boundary. What I'm talking about is way worse. It's basically a situation where that should have been obvious that this is absolutely not even something someone would think to cross. And this is why so many people are having supposedly problem with boundaries, setting boundaries, and so on, because the rage that you even have to set this boundary make you wonder if you want to exist in a world where people have to actually set those boundaries. And I cannot answer that question for you. Um, okay, I cannot answer that question for you. And so what I'm getting is that those of you that do choose to erect a very fierce boundary are going to see to the core of the issue of why you had to set that boundary to begin with. I'll give you an example. One of my colleagues did Mother algol talisman. In fact, this was the person that I heard about algol talismans from. And as I twice, well, how should I say it? When the first time I began to order talismans from there, they have like a Libra stellium and it's my 8th house. So things around credit were fixed for me because they used to have like a PayPal option. And then I was like, well, do you have a credit card option? And in the beginning they didn't have, and later they did. By the time they did, I had a PayPal. So now, beta per se is dealing with, or algol is dealing with currency issues. Whenever Uranus crosses beta per se, we have basically a currency war. And this is the decan of spirit and matter of Taurus. Yeah, I have a lot of spirit on that decan. This is why my previous YouTube channel was called Spirit of Matter. And the funny thing is that as I come to order that talisman, first of all, I had to set very fierce boundaries, express myself, and so on. But also, um, I had another case where my GMT card was basically not supporting this type of payment, or perhaps it's considered occultist business, and so on and so forth. So I actually had to uh, share the fact that I'm not in a hurry to do a digital ID or a biometric ID because I'm seeking for a trafficking free and particularly free of the ritual abuse and dark occult like Aleister Crowley occult that's used to traffic people. And this is so beta per se. This is just so beta per se because I had to set the boundary to basically, you know, the topics that beta per se is dealing with. And there were a lot of beta per se things coming as I was waiting on that wish list. And I used my own talismans of beta per se. So that notion of the female divine rage, raising our voice in rage, and that's not reactive abuse. That's actually a part of the healing process of grounding, and the fact that better per se, when sexual sovereignty is not addressed, but also patient sovereignty. Okay, because what do they make of the people that had to set boundaries that they shouldn't have had to set? Okay, the rage factor, they're being seen as crazy, being punished for speaking, and so on and so forth. And then Beta per se mundanely creates dead bodies upon dead bodies, which is why so many people feared working with Beta per se. Actually, teacher and attorney and astrological magician Christopher Warnock is has done a great deal of explaining people that beta per se mundanely is a horrible thing. Beta per se as a talisman is a very protective talisman, it's a very shielding talisman, and it's actually one of his top selling talismans. So those that try to transmute the energy of beta per se to the dark are basically causing themselves a lot of harm, um, very likely even unnecessarily. So that was another example. Okay, one of these talismans, one of these um, uh, fixed stars that really deal with that rage of people not even like, it's not even a question of learning how to set boundaries, it's not even a question of learning how to say no. Okay, and this is where Uranus is going to go towards beta per se, and conjunct it 1 degree orb, and then go back to Gemini in the coming year, but not less importantly, in the coming, let's say, if Chiron was in Aries since 2018, now with 2025, in the coming decade, Chiron is going to go over beta per se. And the last time we had something of the sort of that thing is when Sedna was next to Beta per se. We had COVID, which was a military operation, it was a global treason that affected female, it's not only female, but because people with wombs menstruate, it affected the fifth vital sign. And this is where, okay, and this is where it was collective treason that exposed agendas that nobody had any idea of, including myself. Like, it was like, um, so in the coming decade, we're going to have Chiron moving from Aries conjoining Aries, to Chiron applying to conjoin Beta per se. And, you know, this is one of the transits that are not easy to begin with. So we had Sedna Beta per se, we had Urano Beta per se, which was the exploding houses in Netherlands, and and I don't remember, like there was something with the Taliban, probably gonna be again, and um, I don't remember like what else was there. It was a really challenging time because of the currency wars. And then those things prepare us for Chiron crossing Beta Persei. So working with Beta Persei and um, tending to that energy, let's say it's not for the faint of heart, is the story of Medusa Gorgon, um, and the stories of the ritual sacrifices that were recreating the trauma of Beta Persei. And particularly the classified project's budget, okay, that was targeting individuals to basically funnel public money to the traffickers, to the original traffickers, by having people living in repetitive trauma, particularly in emergency centers, youth at risk type of boarding schools, jails and hospitals, so anywhere people would turn to for help and assistance. Um, and this is what I mean when I talk about boundaries people shouldn't even have had to set. Now again, when that happens, then on a mundane level, there's dead bodies upon dead bodies, or there is a warding off of those type of negativities and fierce boundary setting in the face of something that literally we should not have been even be put in a situation where we have to set such boundaries. So that's the core issue. There are many people that have even borderline, so to speak, or even bipolar, okay, anything of the split axis, the dead axis, okay, and most of their advices to them would be, yeah, you went through the situation because you needed to learn how to say no. You needed to learn how to set back. No, 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 no. It was a tag on the light. It's not something that any spiritual paradigm can explain, because no spiritual paradigm can excuse that. And it's standing in that truth that wards off. And this is what the teachings of Beta Per Se do. So, and a society that honors sexual sovereignty, for them, Beta Per Se is a wealth talisman. A society that doesn't, for them, it is dead bodies upon dead bodies. Okay? And so, Beta Per Se is in square relations with Deneb Algedi. And Deneb Algedi is about wealth redistribution. Now, why is it in square relationships? Because everybody needs to be desired, to be loved, to be appreciated, and so on, and to enjoy like sexual intimacy and so on and so forth. And yet, they can't rape to meet that need. Okay? And this is where, although Deneb Al-Gadi wards off from of rape by setting internal and external boundaries, but this is the square relations, because Deneb Al-Gadi is about, let's say, wealth redistribution, but also setting the internal boundaries. And I thank Caitlin Kopak for that. She worked with Deneb Al-Gadi, and her experience was that Deneb Al-Gadi would bring in the policing forces, but in favor of the individual. Doesn't mind so much about the jaywalking, as she puts it. Okay, the people across the roads jaywalking. She's American. What can I do? She's North American, but she's not a Karen. I promise. Um, so anyway, but it cares about the real deal, like warding off rapists and stuff like that. So Deneb Al-Gadi is good for that, but it's basically about the police doing its job. Beta per se deals with something way more primordial. Um, for example, what happens if in jail people rape one another? Okay, so the police is like, this person should be warded off, should be this, should be that. Okay, fantastic, but it does. Okay, beta per se tends to the core of the issue, and wards off the evil, not by being kind of like the cop that set the boundary, but by purgatory, standing in one's divine rage in the face of all the rules of how to behave. Deneb Al-Gadi, for example, is about wealth redistribution, but it's also about preservation. For example, um, when I worked with the Deneb Al-Gadi talisman, I began to have this Finnish wisdom of, let's say I received a talisman, so putting some in a bottle of a spray that I used to calm myself down, and putting some in a bottle of sacred water, and that was to preserve, to create, to make sure that I have enough of something. While better per se is about connect connecting to our sensual, connecting to our senses and primordial senses to generate megalithic wealth. Okay, and this is where Deneb Al-Gadi is kind of like the people who live in Finland. Let's make sure that we have enough to sustain the winter. Beta per se is let's generate wealth by having those sensual boundaries that generate an embodied spirit and matter experience of sensuality. It is also wealthy. For example, I'll give you the example of gold. Okay, I learned about gold mining and how mercury is like making unethical gold using mercury. And then I watched channels of miners, not miners, miners. Okay, so so basically, um, they showed where to find the gold, how to find the gold, and then I learned that people from like Arab countries don't have the ability to go and mine for the gold themselves, and I could connect the holistic perspective of sexual sovereignty, because in those communities, sexual sovereignty was something that was less celebrated, and that is a way to ward off the policing of mining the gold and turning it into jewelry, which is less confiscated by the banks. And I would get the best teachings of how to find gold, you can go to ESG Pro on YouTube. They have the best tips on how to find gold in a way that's not effortless, but we're like listening to nature and not having to use mercury or unethical methods to mine the gold. Um, and that is also resolving not just the mercury problems, but also the slavery problems. And so Beta Per Se is exactly that talismans that connect spirit and matter. And when we honor sexual sovereignty, becomes a megalithic wealth talisman. And really, Beta Per Se is megalithic wealth. Okay, there's a reason why there's so many rituals trying to attack the light around Beta Per Se, because even in the myth of Medusa Gorgon, she was more beautiful than Aphrodite and more sensual, like, and and basically her light scared Aphrodite. And this is Beta Per Se is associated with the royalty, and there is so much to transmute around that because of the dark rituals that are done there. Beta Per Se is also megalithic courage. It's courage in the face. Think about why mother algol, because a mother that protects, let's say, her kittens or her cubs or her babies, okay, she gonna do everything. Like, I think I'm half Dutch, and we had Trudy Verstegen from PvdA, was a parliament member, and she had children, and her children got taken away from her. She began to expose the things that nobody talks about on the House of Orange, and nothing and no one could stop her. That's a mother that protects her children. She doesn't care about PC. She doesn't care about it, nothing. And this is also the power of Mother Algol, okay? And so standing in that power, it's courage that people can't even envision. And the rage of the Beta Per Se that was in the story of Medusa Gorgon turned into a talisman. Her hair was turned into snakes, a supposed punishment, and then she turned into a talisman. And the rage in her face, just the stare from her eyes, could turn a man into stone. Now, on a mundane level, and I mentioned that, when sexual sovereignty is not honored, how do men turn into stones usually? They die and they become tombstones. So, her supposed death tombstone was basically the wording of, it's like those that try to F with the Beta Per Se energy get turned into stone. It's not an energy that somebody comes out alive with. And I have to say, when we talk about trafficking, when we talk about child trafficking, elite child trade, and so on and so forth, it's used in extortion cult to extort people. But whatever these people do, okay, unless they ward off the evil, unless they tend to set those boundaries, and with this megalithic courage, then whatever they do, they're gonna get assassinated. Okay, because they effed with a child's sexual energy, life energy. Okay, they effed with a child. Now they gonna get turned to stone. Okay, and the only trajectory, and I do know people that were raped, okay, as children in those rituals, and they had to participate in victimizing others, and then they came out to as survivors and came against this entire project of the cloning and the torturing and so on and so forth. Okay, so I just want to state that that's possible. And begin to talk about the psychiatry and how the DSM-5 is basically a shout out to Lars Roman Lars, shout out to Lars Royman. I think you can see him on Trudy's channel and Trudy Verstegen. And this is, or Mama versus Mafia. And this is where they began to expose basically the mistreat of people under the guise of psychiatry, which is so connected to beta per se, because this is the realm of psychic attacks, this is the realm of perpetuating trauma, this is the realm of basically trying to crazy make, okay, all the classified projects, dumb fuckery. And this is the fixed star that most connects with the boundaries that one doesn't even need to set, in the sense that this is rage over something that one should not have to begin with set these boundaries, because those are the types of attacks that are attack on the light. Okay, let's say Beta per se was very beautiful, very sensual, okay, and a nymph, and somebody, let's say, wanted to be with her. Okay, if they honor their yes, no, and maybe, perhaps they could have a chance. But since they tried to rape her, they ruined their own chance with Beta per se. And also, the guy that raped her was not available. Okay, they were not. Now, here's the thing. I want to also offer another perspective, that is the lover boy trafficking scam. Okay, and in that case, it can be, let's say, somebody meets someone in the astral. They're like, oh my god, who's that person? Wait, they're married? Wait, they have a girlfriend? Wait, they have a boyfriend? And in that case, it's not like somebody raped somebody, okay? But it's kind of like, wait a second, what happened here? And some of those people, some of those cases, actually are lover boy trafficking scams. Now, there are also third parties for, let's say, a person that's gone through ritual abuse and, let's say, has a girlfriend or has a spousey, then they would have floaters. And there could be a third party taking on their energy and matching that with another person's energy, so it would look like it's them doing that. And this is important, and this is why, for example, somebody would avoid like accusing someone outright when they don't know all the details. Okay, but if that was consciously that person doing the astral whatever to be a lover boy, to traffic someone, okay, to partake, basically partaking that MK often type of scenarios, then that counts as a beta per se story. Because let's say that the third party, boy, girl, whatever gender, would be in a situation where even if they weren't like raped, they were be put in a situation where they seemed like the third party, where in fact they never asked to be in a situation of triangulation, and the entire thing was a scam to traffic them, to dehouse them, to traffic them, and so on and so forth. So in such a case, that can also be a beta per se situation, and it can also be a situation where somebody used that third party, somebody used someone, let's say somebody's married, somebody has a girlfriend, somebody used their energy, okay, if they were susceptible, they were, maybe even if they were in a personality code or whatnot, somebody used their energy to take on their energy as they tried to traffic the person, and then there would be a totally complex and intricate situation where the third party of between the parties, okay, that was acting underneath the glove of the hand, get caught red-handed, because they're gonna be, first of all, the spouse is going to notice energetically. The person that they took their energy might not notice that immediately, or they might see, hey, who is that person? Wait a second, their energy sounds familiar, but I don't remember. Okay, or if that's actually conscious, then that is also a better procedure. And during Sedna Beta Per Se, there were a lot of such triangulation situations that were creating something that looked like, and I think Venus is essential for that, because until I ran into that once when Caitlin mentioned that term, and never again. And then I ran into that with Venus Essentials, and she's doing like, um, she completely exposed all the trafficking agendas that happened budgeted by classified operations, okay? They were declassified, okay? MK Afton was recently declassified, and I talked about it in another video, but that term called the single white woman, which is why I said to Caitlin, sometimes the single white woman is the married white man. And whether, okay, and that was the thing, because Beta Per Se, she was violated, or there was attempt to traffic or whatnot, not by a single man, but by a man that was basically with Aphrodite. And not only that, he was with freaking Aphrodite. Okay? He was with Aphrodite. So, so that is another such situation. And whichever the case, usually the people that are doing the lover boy are not single. So whether, okay, so whether it was somebody taking somebody energy or somebody consciously doing something, anyway, more than likely it was the single white man. Okay. And that is so important, and that was said not better per se. That was said not better per se. Now, there were also situations where people that were somebody's friends tried to traffic their friends, which would be causing megalithic karma to anybody that attempted or that participated in such timelines. Okay, and that was the thing. Until I saw Venus Essentials um, um, wording off of trafficking agenda videos, I was like, what is that damn? Well, that was the thing. It was triangulation, trying to cause treason, separation, trafficking, and so on and so forth, and isolate the trafficked people so that no one would believe them. So that they're seen like the whore, the cheating partner, and invoke and the point was that the goal was to invoke the feminine rage of the committed partner. And so, like, that's in the case that the committed partner wasn't a part of the trafficking scam. Okay? Which is a different situation to cheating. Okay? Cheating is one, and those scenarios are completely different. Cheating is usually resolved by Uranus. Okay? Cheating, and look at the Sterparel, erotic intelligence. Cheating is usually resolved by those situations. The things that get intricate, and this is where Uranus is going to cross Beta Per Se, going to conjoin it in a 1 degree orb again. This time not with Sedna. Okay, we're done with the Sedna. But this time the divorces, if there will be divorces around that timeline, they will be divorces on the basis of what I just said, which is very intricate type of divorces. Um, yeah, the moon squaring Uranus. And here is the thing. When a beta per se situation occurs, oh, I knew it. I don't know how I had that feeling. The moon ingressed into Virgo. And it's also Mars hour now. Okay? And here's the thing with beta per se, it's megalithic courage. It's courage to the megalithic level of like writing the CIA occult department directly and asking them for compensation for the classified projects, and for a type of method that does not have those, okay, type of rituals under the Aleister Crowley type of occult that's meant to traffic people. Like, that's type of warding off of evil that takes the space back to the sovereign, to the sexual sovereign, that wards off the evil that comes to violate sexual sovereignty, and by that also sovereignty. That's the type of beta per se thing. Those that use beta per se energy to perpetuate trauma, they're gonna be met with equally courageous forces that ward off that evil, and beta per se is an energy that stops at nothing until it is safe and free, because it's a wealth talisman. Okay? Think about a mother that protects her children. A mother that protects her children stops at nothing to make sure child is safe and free. Even if it's not her own children. And this is a quality. Think about when a child is born, then there is this quality where things we haven't said before, now we're no nonsense about. Now it's like it's no okay, where like politically correct goes out the window. That's the child's life at stake, and so everybody says everything. Now, Better Per Se has three phases. It has the minima phase where we don't make talismans. Okay? Now, I know that some people are going to do it on purpose. What can I do? Okay? And this is called red algol. Why? Because in those eclipse times, it's basically a binary star that eclipses every 3 days. And in those eclipse times, basically there's something natural that occurs that exposes and takes away certain things to do with the signification of the star. And then we have the decreasing, okay, the decreasing phase where it's about to eclipse. And this is where it is purgatory, purification. Okay, it's kind of like last chances before eclipse. Um, and then we have the rising phase, which is the big wealth shielding, but also wealth talisman. This is where Beta per se is a wealth talisman. All of the phases of Beta per se, okay, black algol, which is the decreasing phase, which is the shielding, the warding off, and even put it punitive qualities. Red algol, which is like nobody wanna mess with algol when she is eclipsing. Okay, nobody think about a person with a womb during their moon days. Okay, ain't nobody wanna mess with that. Remember when I talked about rage and I screamed in my own rage, and then I said, you see, when a woman doesn't feel safe, she's enraged, become a man like, and whatever, however loud and aggressive and worse than a man she is, you can't tell her nothing because this is divine feminine rage. And this is true. We can laugh about it all we want, but this is divine feminine rage. It's worse than a man's rage, like it is protective of life uh, in so many ways. Also, for men, it is so when they are tending to protect the sexual boundaries. Um, but and that's red. Like I'm sure alcohol was minimum around the time. However, let's see what is the phase of alcohol right now. And we go to alcohol minima. Alcohol minima calculator. And this is something very important for people to do talismans of alcohol. Um, and this is, yes, if only in the 19th, then that means that time it was minima. um, so this is where, okay, so this is where we are towards the rising of Beta per se, which is a wealth talisman. Benefic time to work with Beta per se. Um, Now, when do we call on Beta per se? It's about anything that's associated with enforcing sexual sovereignty. And in the spirit on matter, because when we set energy boundaries, that affects a lot of people that, for example, for Venus Essentials, people that worked with her mantras for anti trafficking, it worked for their wealth as well. Okay, because that's what basically they try to take from people. There's no doing the double with Beta per se that doesn't get caught red handed. And it get caught red handed on the level in which it operated. For example, if that's an energy level, it get caught red handed on an energy level. If that's transmuting energy to wealth in a way that is rapey, it get caught red handed on that transmutation level. And attempting to F with that, um, basically exposes everyone to, okay, for those things. Um, some people say that there is a humbling energy to Beta per se. I don't see it that way. I don't think she comes to humble. I think the humbling timelines are a part of human trafficking timelines. So if people feel humbling energy, it's not Beta per se. It's attempt to imitate the energy of that diamond. Okay. Humbling energy, Mormon trafficking cult. Okay? Humbling is a Mormon trafficking cult word. Um, so, more things to say about that. She will definitely uncover any traces or remnants of ritual abuse around the lineage, because Beta per se is intergenerational wealth. She uncovers the core, she will unravel the core issue of something at hand. Well, I won't open this right now. So this is what I have to say.